You know what's funny about turning 43? Everyone suddenly has an opinion about your value as a human being. Your worth, your potential, your expiration date. My ex-fiancé Marcus had plenty of opinions. Standing in our kitchen, the one I'd picked out every detail for. He looked at me with this expression I'll never forget. Not anger, not even guilt. It was pity. Like I was a charity case he'd finally worked up the courage to abandon. "Sarah, you're 43 years old," he said, setting down his coffee mug on the granite countertop I'd chosen. "I need to think about my future, about having a family. You're too old for what I want now." Too old. I was too old. Not, "I don't love you anymore." Not, "We want different things." Not even, "I met someone else." Though I'd find out about Jessica soon enough. 28 years old, worked at his firm, all the usual clichés. Well, I was simply too old to be part of his future. What Marcus didn't know, what nobody knew except my parents, was that while he was evaluating my worth based on my age, there was a number growing in the background of my life. A number that had been growing quietly for 40 years. $25 a month. That's all it took. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. To the moment everything shattered. And then, eventually, to the moment everything made perfect sense. 6 months before Marcus decided I was too old, we were planning our wedding. I need you to understand something. I loved this man. Not the silly, butterfly kind of love you have in your 20s. This was the deep, comfortable love you build over 5 years together. The kind where you finish each other's sentences and know exactly how the other person takes their coffee, and you've already mentally decorated your future nursery even though, yes, at 43, it would probably require IVF and a small miracle. We'd met at a charity gala. I was there representing the non-profit I worked for. Environmental conservation, if you're curious. $43,000 a year salary. Enough to live on, not enough to thrive on, but I believed in the mission. Marcus was there because his law firm sponsored the event. Tax write-off networking dressed up as philanthropy. He was charming, successful, 46 years old himself, so the age thing felt like a non-issue. We talked about traveling to Costa Rica to see the cloud forests. He actually listened when I explained the reforestation projects we were funding. By the end of the night, he'd asked for my number. The relationship progressed exactly the way you'd expect. Long conversations. Meeting each other's friends. He introduced me to his partners at the firm. I introduced him to my parents over Sunday dinner. More on them later because they're crucial to this story. His apartment was downtown. Sleek, modern, expensive. Mine was a modest 2-bedroom in a neighborhood that was up and coming, which is realtor code for not quite there yet. When he proposed after 3 years, he suggested we get a new place together. Something that was ours. I should have noticed that he picked everything. The neighborhood, his choice, close to his office. The style, contemporary, which he preferred over my love of warmer, cozier spaces. Even the paint colors. I told myself it didn't matter. Relationships are about compromise, right? I covered half the down payment. Cleaned out my savings account. $28,000. Every penny I'd managed to save over 20 years of working in the non-profit sector. Marcus nodded approvingly when I showed him the bank transfer. "Good," he said. "Equal partners." Equal partners. I held on to those words like a lifeline over the next 2 years as we built our life together. I handled all the cooking because his hours were long. I organized the social calendar. I made sure his mother got birthday cards. I researched fertility clinics and quietly cried in the bathroom when the doctor said IVF was possible but not guaranteed at my age. "We'll make it work," Marcus would say, distracted, checking his phone. "We have time." We had time right up until we didn't. It was a Tuesday morning, March 16th. I remember because it was 2 days after my 43rd birthday. A birthday Marcus had barely acknowledged beyond a quick, "happy birthday," before he left for work. I was making breakfast. Eggs, toast, the fancy coffee he liked from the place 3 blocks over. Trying to be the woman who made his life easier. The woman worth keeping. He came into the kitchen already dressed in his suit, checked his watch, and then he just said it. "Sarah, we need to talk about us." You know that feeling when your stomach drops? When every cell in your body suddenly understands that something terrible is about to happen. I set down the spatula and turned to face him. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued. Professional voice. The one he used in depositions. "About what I want. What I need. And I don't think this is working anymore." "What do you mean?" My voice sounded strange. High-pitched. "Did something happen? Are you unhappy with?" "You're 43 years old," he interrupted. Clinical. Direct. "I need to think about my future. About having a family. You're too old for what I want now." Silence. Complete, crushing silence except for the sound of eggs burning on the stove. "Too old," I repeated. Not a question. Just saying the words back to him, trying to make them make sense. "I want kids, Sarah. Biological kids. And realistically, I mean, you've seen the statistics. IVF at your age is expensive and uncertain. And even if it worked, you'd be in your 60s when they graduate high school. I can't do that." My hands were shaking. "We talked about this. You said we'd figure it out. You said." "I know what I said. But I've changed my mind. I'm sorry, but I have to be honest about what I need." There's something almost admirable about the cruelty of honesty, isn't there? He wasn't even trying to soften the blow. Just straight to the point. "You're old, you're inconvenient, goodbye. How long have you been thinking about this?" "Yes." He shifted his weight. Checked his watch again. "A few months. Few months. While I was researching fertility clinics. While I was planning our wedding. While I was playing the role of supportive partner. He'd been mentally calculating my depreciation value. Is there someone else? That's not relevant to. Is. Or. Someone. Else. He sighed. Jessica and I have gotten close, yes. But that's not why I'm doing this. I'd be ending things regardless. Jessica. I knew her. 28 years old. Associate at his firm. Blonde, ambitious, wearing pencil skirts and youth-like armor. How long? My voice was barely a whisper now. It doesn't matter. Wow. Long. 3 months. But Sarah, this isn't about her. This is about me finally being honest about what I need in a partner. 3 months. He'd been sleeping with someone else for 3 months while coming home to me. While letting me make his coffee and plan our future and slowly destroy my savings account on shared expenses. "I want you out by the end of the month," he added. "The apartment's in both our names, but I'll buy out your portion of the down payment. Fair is fair. Fair is fair." I looked around our kitchen. At the cabinets I'd picked out. The backsplash I'd spent 3 weekends installing myself because we were trying to save money. The home I'd helped build. Where am I supposed to go? He shrugged. She shrugged. Maybe your parents can help. Don't you have friends you can stay with? And that's when something inside me just broke. Not dramatically. Not with screaming or throwing things. Just a quiet internal collapse. The foundation of my life cracking down the middle. "Get out," I said softly. "This is my apartment too. Get out." He left. Probably relieved to skip the messy emotional part. I stood in that kitchen for 20 minutes, staring at the burned eggs, before I finally pulled out my phone and called the only people I knew would answer. "Mom." My voice cracked. "Can I come home?" My parents' house looked exactly the same as it had my entire life. Small, well-maintained, in a neighborhood that had somehow resisted gentrification through sheer force of community stubbornness. The garden my mother obsessed over was in full spring bloom. My father's ancient truck sat in the driveway, rust spots and all. I'd grown up lower middle class. Not poverty, but definitely not comfort. My parents worked hard. Dad in construction, Mom as a school secretary. They'd given me everything they could, but everything they could meant a lot of love and not a lot of money. I'd always been conscious of it. The used clothes. The community college before transferring to state school. The summer jobs starting at 15. I'd watched my friends' parents buy them cars and pay for study abroad trips while I cobbled together scholarships and took out loans. It made me grateful, made me hungry, made me determined to build something stable for myself. And now, at 43, I was moving back into my childhood bedroom. My mother opened the door before I could knock. One look at my face and she pulled me into a hug. No questions. Just arms and safety and the smell of her lavender laundry detergent. "Come inside, sweetheart." My father appeared in the hallway. Tall, weathered, quiet in the way men of his generation often are. But his eyes were fierce with protective anger when I told them what happened. "That son of a," he started. "Tom," my mother warned. "He's a coward," Dad finished. "A coward and a fool." We sat at their kitchen table. The same table I'd done homework at, eaten thousands of meals at, had countless family conversations at. I told them everything. The breakup, Jessica, the apartment I'd have to leave, my emptied savings account, the casual cruelty of being told I was too old. My mother's face cycled through emotions. Rage, sadness, then something else. Something I couldn't quite read. She glanced at my father. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. "Sarah," she said carefully, "there's something we need to talk about. Something we should have told you years ago, but we wanted to wait for the right time. And maybe this is it." I looked between them. "What do you mean?" Dad cleared his throat. "When you were born, we didn't have much. You know that. But we wanted to make sure you'd have something. Some kind of safety net. So we made a choice. We scraped together $25 a month," Mom continued. "Every single month since you were born. It wasn't much, but it was what we could manage. And we put it into an investment account." "An investment account," I repeated numbly. "Like a college fund." "Not exactly," Dad said. "We did help with college, but that was separate. This was different. We put the money into an index fund. Just let it sit there. Let it grow." My brain was moving slowly, still stuck in shock from the last 48 hours. "Okay." Mom reached across the table and took my hand. "Sarah, that account has been growing for 43 years. With compound interest and market growth. We checked the balance last week. And," Dad pulled out his phone, opened a banking app, slid it across the table to me. I looked at the screen, looked at the numbers, looked again because it didn't make sense. $847,362.18. That's not possible," I whispered. $25 a month for 43 years, Dad explained. Principal investment of $12,900. The market averaged about 7% annual return over that time. Compound interest is a beautiful thing. The account's in your name, Mom added. Always has been. We're just the custodians. On your 45th birthday, we were planning to officially transfer it and tell you about it. A sort of financial freedom gift. But given what's happening, I stared at the number. $847,000. We wanted you to know that you're not starting over, Mom said softly. You're not broken. You're not too old. You're not anything that cruel man said you were. You're our daughter, and you've always had this safety net. We just didn't want you to know too early and have it change how you lived your life. I started crying. Not sad tears anymore. Something else. Something that felt like the ground stabilizing beneath me after months of feeling like I was falling. Why didn't you tell me? Yes. Because we wanted you to build your life based on what you wanted, not what you had, Dad said. We wanted you to work because you loved your job, date who you loved, make choices because they were right for you. Not because you had money in the bank. And look at you, Mom added. You became exactly who you were meant to be. Kind, passionate, hardworking. This money didn't make you. But now it can help you. I sat there, surrounded by my parents in their small, perfect house, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. For the first time in my adult life, I had real, actual power. Options. Freedom. And suddenly, Marcus's words didn't hurt quite so much anymore. I'm not going to pretend I turned into some corporate badass overnight. Life doesn't work like that. The money didn't erase the pain or the betrayal or the nights I lay awake wondering what was wrong with me. But it did give me something Marcus's abandonment had stolen: choice. I moved out of the apartment a week early. Didn't wait for the end of the month. Hired movers took everything that was mine and left Marcus a note on the counter. Keep your buyout. Consider it payment for an education in recognizing my worth. Then I disappeared. Not literally. But I blocked him on everything, retained a lawyer to handle any necessary communication, and focused on myself for the first time in 5 years. I want to be clear about something. This story isn't about me using the money to show him, with expensive cars or designer clothes or some dramatic revenge plot. That's not how real revenge works. Real revenge is living so well that the person who hurt you becomes irrelevant. Here's what I actually did. First, I quit my nonprofit job. Not because I stopped caring about environmental conservation, but because I'd been underpaid and undervalued for 2 decades. I'd stayed because I felt like I had no choice. Now I had choices. I took 3 months to just breathe. Traveled to Costa Rica alone and volunteered with a reforestation project. Hiked through cloud forests. Sat with my thoughts. Processed the grief and anger and confusion without anyone's timeline but my own. When I came back, I started consulting. Used my 20 years of nonprofit experience to help other organizations build their programs. Set my own rates. Worked with clients I actually respected. Made more in 6 months than I'd made in the previous 3 years. I bought a small house. Nothing fancy but mine. Every paint color, every piece of furniture, every decision was mine alone. I planted a garden. Adopted a dog. A massive, goofy rescue mutt named Buster who had also been abandoned and deserved a second chance. I started therapy. Not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I'd accepted so little for so long. Why I'd let Marcus define my value. Why I'd internalized the idea that I was running out of time. And slowly, month by month, I rebuilt myself into someone I actually recognized. Here's the thing about getting older that society doesn't tell you. It's not about losing value. It's about gaining it. I knew myself at 43 in a way I never could have at 28. I knew what I wanted, what I wouldn't tolerate, what made me happy, what was bullshit. I stopped apologizing for taking up space. Stopped trying to be convenient. Stopped making myself smaller so other people would be comfortable. And then, about a year after the breakup, I ran into Marcus. It was at a coffee shop downtown. One of those inevitable small city coincidences where you can only avoid someone for so long. I was meeting a client. Dressed professionally, feeling good, genuinely not thinking about Marcus at all. And then there he was. Standing in line. Looking tired. Older somehow, though only a year had passed. He saw me. Did this weird double take. And then, to my complete surprise, he walked over. Sarah. Marcus. Awkward silence. I could see him cataloging the changes. The confidence. The professional clothes. The fact that I looked happy. You look good, he said carefully. Thank you. More silence. I heard you started your own consulting thing, he continued. That's great. Really great. It is. He shifted his weight. Listen, I know this is random, but are you seeing anyone? Actually laughed. Couldn't help it. Why would you possibly ask me that? He had the grace to look embarrassed. Jessica and I aren't together anymore. Didn't work out. And I've been thinking about us a lot. About how maybe I made a mistake. There it was. The moment every wronged person imagines. The ex crawling back. Admitting they were wrong. And you know what? Felt like absolutely nothing. A mistake, I repeated flatly. I was wrong about the age thing, he said, rushing now. You were right. We could have made it work. I just got scared and… Marcus. Cut him off. I'm going to stop you right there. 'Cause I need you to understand something. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to value me based on my age and fertility potential instead of who I actually was. You chose to have an affair instead of having an honest conversation. You chose cruelty over compassion. I know, but I'm not done. Those choices showed me exactly who you are. And here's the thing, I'm grateful. Because you freed me from a future where I would have spent decades trying to be enough for someone who was never going to see my value. You did me a favor. His face was red now. So that's it. You won't even consider. There's nothing to consider. I've built an incredible life without you. I'm successful, happy, and most importantly, I'm with someone who actually values me. This was a tiny lie. I was casually dating but nothing serious yet, but it felt good to say. Someone who values you, he repeated bitterly. Right. I'm sure your consulting business is very fulfilling, Sarah, but let's be realistic about what? My age. My worth. Please, tell me more about what I should be realistic about. He stopped. Recognized he'd walked into a trap of his own making. I need to go, I said, checking my phone. I have a meeting with a client who's paying me more for one consultation than I used to make in a month at the nonprofit. Was not good seeing you, actually. Take care of yourself, Marcus. I walked away. Didn't look back. And I swear to you, it was the most satisfying moment of the entire experience. Not because I'd hurt him, but because I'd shown him, and more importantly, shown myself, that his opinion of me was irrelevant. So here's where I'm supposed to tell you about some big, dramatic finale. About how Marcus lost everything and I became a millionaire CEO and he begged me to take him back and I rode off into the sunset with a new perfect partner. But that's not how life works. The truth is messier and honestly more satisfying. Marcus is fine. Still working at his firm. Dating someone new, probably telling her she's different, special, not like his ex living his life. And that's okay. His happiness or unhappiness isn't my responsibility anymore. Jessica, from what I heard through mutual acquaintances, realized pretty quickly that dating your boss who left his fiancée for you is maybe not the fairy tale it seems. They lasted 7 months. My consulting business grew. I hired an assistant, then another consultant. Started focusing specifically on helping nonprofit organizations led by women over 40, because turns out there are a lot of us who've been undervalued and underpaid and are ready to change that. The money from my parents. I use some of it, but honestly most of it is still invested, still growing. I didn't need to spend it to prove anything. The security of having it was enough. That and knowing my parents loved me enough to sacrifice $25 a month for 43 years. Money that probably meant missing some dinners out or delaying some home repairs. So I'd have options they never did. I'm 44 now. 44. The age Marcus thought was too old to be worth investing in. And I'm just getting started. I'm dating someone. A man who's 51, divorced, who thinks my ambition is sexy and my age is irrelevant. It might not last forever and that's okay. I'm not racing against a biological clock anymore. I'm not trying to fit into someone else's timeline. I did end up freezing my eggs. Not because some man might want kids someday, but because I wanted the option. My choice. My timeline. My life. The nonprofit I used to work for brought me on as a board member. I helped them triple their budget in 2 years. That felt better than any revenge scheme could have. My parents are proud. Not because of the money or the business or the house, but because I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. The kind of happy that comes from knowing exactly who you are and refusing to apologize for it. Here's what I learned from all of this. Society will tell you that your value as a woman has an expiration date. That you're racing against time. That you need to accept less because you have less to offer. That's a lie. A cruel, profitable lie designed to keep you small and desperate and willing to settle. Your value doesn't decrease with age. Compounds. Like those $25 monthly investments my parents made. Every experience, every heartbreak, every lesson, every year lived adds to who you are. You're not losing potential. You're gaining wisdom. And wisdom is knowing that anyone who evaluates your worth based on your age is someone whose opinion is worthless. Marcus called me too old at 43. He thought he was ending my story. Instead, he just cleared the way for me to write a better one. My parents' $25 monthly investment gave me financial security. But the real gift was teaching me that true investment is patience, consistency, and believing in long-term value even when others can't see it yet. I was never too old. I was just finally old enough to stop accepting less than I deserved. And that, more than any amount of money, more than any revenge, more than any proof that I'm still valuable, that's what made me a millionaire in the ways that actually matter. If you're going through something similar right now, if someone has told you that you're too old, too much, too difficult, not enough, I need you to hear this. They're wrong. Not wrong in the way where you need to prove it to them. Wrong in the way where their opinion is completely irrelevant to your actual value. You don't need revenge. You need to build something so solid, so genuine, so yours that their words become background noise. $25 a month for 43 years became $800,000. Small, consistent investments in yourself, in your skills, your boundaries, your self-respect, will compound into something powerful. You're not starting over. You're starting better. With more knowledge, more strength, more clarity about what you will and won't accept. And that's not too old. That's just right.